Joined by Braden Gall, the owner of 440 Sports, and he happens to be the host as well. All kinds of podcasts on there. And I have to be honest, I called Braden and spoke to him for probably about 100 hours over the course of a month. He was very helpful in getting Off the Hook Sports going, and a lot of things you've done, I've pretty much copied. You're tremendous. I don't mind saying it.
Well,
You've done a tremendous job. I appreciate the time.
No, happy to be here. Talking season, we got Tennessee Day coming up, so happy to be here. Happy to help. I think you're giving me way too much credit. Honestly,
No, I'm not. No, I was actually at one point going to start cutting you a consultant check. But
I won't turn that down.
Tell us what's happening at 440 Sports for those that don't know.
So we are a independent Nashville media company that hosts shows that cover everything in the Nashville market and Tennessee as a state. So we cover SEC football. We've got a show, Fringe Element, where we talk all SEC football every single episode. We've got a bunch of different Titans shows. We've got a podcast called Football and Other F Words, which covers the Tennessee Titans, Music City Audible. We've got a show called A Football Show, which is very creative. You can catch us live on the YouTube page Mondays and Thursdays. That's a Titans and SEC sort of combo show. Myself and Zach Lyons. We've got a show that covers the Nashville Predators, the Gold Standard. We've got a show that covers Nashville SC, Club and Country. We've got a media show called Lamestream Sports. We've got all kinds of stuff. If it happens in Middle Tennessee or the state of Tennessee, in the SEC or in professional sports, we sort of try to cover it. We do it all digitally. It's all on demand, and fans can come and go as they choose. And I've worked in all different types of mediums, magazines, radio, etc. But I've had the most fun putting this project and this company together, and I think the fans have responded, sponsors have responded, and we deliver really high quality content that we call it no empty calories. It's all nutritional content. It's long form conversations. It's in-depth analysis, and we're having fun doing it. So check out all of those things I just mentioned.
No, I love it. And I wanted to get because you have your finger on the pulse of the mid-state area, which I think maybe 3 years ago, hands down, was a Titans area, Tennessee Titans. They would have the majority, I would think, of the share of your audience. And then UT comes in, and they've been a presence before, but now with Josh Heupel, how does that change the dynamic of the sports world in Nashville?
So the Titans, I love this question because I'm fascinated by what people are interested in.
Me too.
And so when I moved to Tennessee in 1997, Nashville was a Tennessee volunteer market, number one, obviously, and NASCAR. Those are the two things that the city paid attention to a lot. SEC football and NASCAR were top two. And then in the late 90s, we vote as a city to bring the Titans. We build what is now Bridgestone Arena and bring the Preds, and we decided to become a professional sports town. That happened to coincide with Tennessee kind of becoming a mess, University of Tennessee becoming a mess. The night we drove Old Kiffy down is basically when that started. And so what the Titans still dominate ratings on the whole by insane margins. But what happened is we became like an Alabama market right around 2007. I don't know how that worked out, but
it was Mike Shula.
The power T's started disappearing off the cars, and the script A's started showing up, and Alabama was the big draw in the market. University of Tennessee still did very well, but it was the big Alabama games that would get the biggest ratings. So we kind of became like this weird, I think there's a lot of bandwagon fans that just sort of started showing their A's a little bit more around town. And this past year, all this rambling to get to, the Titans pull about 22s, 23s in our market, which is about 250,000 people, which is about a third of the market, a little less than a third of the market. They would win the top 16 or 17 now, most watched sporting events in the city would be Tennessee Titans games. Last year, the two highest rated sporting events in the city was Tennessee Bama and Tennessee Georgia.
Wow.
Those were the high. So it still is a Tennessee Titans market, but Tennessee Volunteers football has now become because Josh Heupel's offense is entertaining, because they're competitive. And again, we haven't seen it sustained for 10 years, but in this one season, they kind of jumped back into the fray, and college football as a whole was elevated. So a lot more games in the 12s, 13s, 15s, 18s ratings points wise. People are watching the Iron Bowl at a high level. People are watching Georgia, Florida at a high level. All these games. Tennessee, Pittsburgh was one of the top 15 games in the market, and that includes all college football games, right? That includes Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, everything. Tennessee Pitt last year was one of the top most watched games in Nashville. So it's still, NFL is still bigger. It just is. I can't explain it, but really good, important Tennessee volunteer football games are now competing with the NFL, not beating the NFL, at least last year. And we'll see if Heupel's offense and the team this year can match it, because if they're good again, there's no reason to think Bama, Tennessee, and Bama, Georgia won't also still be very highly rated games in 2023.
Yeah, and how big is that, do you think, for Josh Heupel for, we say fundraising, but really we're talking about NIL now.
Right,
that was a term we'd used 10 years ago. But we're talking about NIL that could potentially come from the mid-state area and recruiting as the area continues to grow in population size.
It used to be 100 people per day were moving to Nashville from about 05 to like 2015. It was 100 people per day moving to Nashville. That's only going to up the chance at recruits, right? At increasing the recruiting population. The move south into the Sun Belt's been well documented from Pennsylvania and Ohio and California now. But we're down to about 40 people a day, but we're still bringing in 40 people a day into the city of Nashville, which is only going to increase the recruiting base in general in the city. And then Josh Heupel staying good and relevant. That's where your dollars come in for NIL and the money goes up. What I always say, though, to people, and I'm shocked. I've had a lot of arguments with like Kentucky folks over this. Excuse me. Tennessee's recruiting base, the 6-hour radius around Knoxville, which is largely the number one indicator of where a player is going to go. And I've talked to a lot of players actually recently about NIL money, and it's less of the money starting to level out. So it's starting to go back to more traditional decision making, where you decide on relationship with coach, geography, system, and that because the money's starting to even out, right? Like Auburn and Tennessee and Alabama and Florida are all offering about the same amount of money now. So it goes back to the regular stuff, right? It goes back to recruiting, offensive system, right? Is where Josh Heupel would sell this. But the 6-hour radius around Knoxville, I would attest, has been significantly better every step of the way than it ever gets credit for. You can get to almost to Richmond, Virginia, Valdosta, Georgia, almost Jackson, Mississippi, Ohio, West Virginia. You can get all of North Carolina, all of North Georgia, and all of that population has moved down into that. So that radius, which was underrated in 1998, let's say, is even more underrated now because it's even stronger and deeper. When I was in high school in 99, I played ball in Nashville. There were 5 Power 5 prospects in the mid-state area. Now there are 35 that signed. The 35th guy now gets a Mississippi State offer. And I was the 35th guy in 1999, and I got a Tennessee Tech offer. That's the difference in the growth in the recruiting base. And I think it's still going up. Like we're still flying high, and that includes Huntsville, that includes Kentucky, that includes all the areas that are within 6 hours of Knoxville. I think it's a great recruiting base, and it's not as good as Georgia's. Like Georgia has a better recruiting base, Florida has a better recruiting base, but it's still way better than 90% of college football teams, and I think that's slept on a lot in the conversation about Tennessee's ability to land top 15 classes.
Well, and I think you would agree, too, that right now it's a bit of a cosmopolitan town in terms of people moving in. But if Josh Heupel's able to have sustained success, you can make it a Tennessee town. I use, for instance, my son, who's 18. He doesn't know Tennessee being a good program ever. I mean, He doesn't remember that. If you can have that sort of sustained success, I believe you have success 8-10 years down the line in recruiting in Nashville.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like it's so funny to hear somebody say Nashville is so cosmopolitan. It's certainly gotten that way. Relative to Knoxville, it certainly is that. Relative to Atlanta, it's not even close to that, right? So it's all relative. But you're right about the sort of the growth of the town and the market and what it's going to be. And I don't think it takes, like, to your point, like when I think of the SEC theme song, when I think of the CBS music, I think of Florida versus Tennessee. Like that's what I think about. When you first hear that music, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Your son probably thinks Alabama or Georgia, right? Like when he hears that music, it's going to trigger a different memory than if you grew up in middle school and high school in the 90s, like I did. Sorry to date myself. But that is, even just last year, seeing them in those moments. Now, again, it'll be on ESPN in a couple of years, so it's a little different. But the point being that when they get to like 3 or 4 years, yes, that happens. Yes, it starts to ingrain into younger generations. But I honestly, this is where I have had so many arguments with people. Like, Tennessee didn't go anywhere. Like, they weren't, like, they made bad decisions. And every program makes bad decisions. They just continually made bad decisions. And now they've made good decisions. And now they're back to being relevant again because of that. And some of it was self-inflicted. Some of it was at the donor level. Some of it was at the president of the university level. Some of it was the 8th athletic director. Plenty of bad coaches that were hired that should never have been hired. But no program is immune to bad decision making. So I don't think you need the 8 years of success to teach the younger generation. I think you've already done it with beating Alabama and beating Bryce Young with Hendon Hooker, as long as you stay aligned with the right people in charge, which I think they've done with Donnie Plowman, Danny White, and Josh Heupel. That's alignment. That's consistency. They're all pulling in the right direction. I don't think it takes 10 years to do that. I think it takes resources and fans and good recruiting base, and they have all of that. They've never not had all of that. They just kept hiring bad people for the job, and now they've hired good ones, and now it's lined up. Ask any program. The only ones that haven't done it are like Ohio State and maybe Oklahoma. But like, other than that, USC's had tons of bad hires. Texas can't win. Texas should have all the national championships. They screwed up all the time. It took Georgia 40 years to win a national championship. Florida has hired a bunch of knuckleheads as well. Like, you're not immune to this.
Maybe one now.
I think Napier is actually really good. So
okay.
As he just walked by a minute ago, I'm not saying that because of him, but I think he's doing it the right way. Is he going to get to enjoy the fruits of his labor? That remains to be seen. But I think he's doing it the right way, building out the massive infrastructure and everything that Florida Dan Mullen and Will Muschamp just clearly didn't allow him to have. I just think it's about good people, and no program is immune to bad decisions. Tennessee made a bunch of bad decisions. They're back making good ones, and let's see what happens from here on out. I think Tennessee fans should be excited. It doesn't mean they're going to win 10 games this year, but I think Tennessee fans should be excited about the future because of the organizational structure that they now have.
Braden, thanks not only for these few moments, but a lot of great insight. Check out 440 Sports. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.